Hello, all. This is Pharaoh Vincent with Nation 506, and I just wanted to come to you guys with a very, um, interesting video. It's a different kind of topic than what I normally do, because I wanted to talk about a little bit about meta switches. And anyone who doesn't know meta, it's kind of this idea of what is everyone doing, what is the common ground that has been agreed upon by all players, but also just kind of what generally is working, right? It's very common in like uh, RPG games or games that have many different paths you can take to say, okay, but what is the agreed upon path? And obviously there are some sub metas where it's like, well, what counters that path and what does this? But I really want to focus on the main one because there's a couple of items that have been slowly shifting the meta back towards a bit of parity when it comes to the current strategy. So what let's talk about what the current meta is, right? And then let's talk about how it's slowly eroding. Um, so in our current meta, a lot of the troops that we prioritize is troops that allow us to bypass the front row and deal damage to the back row. These are the cannons. These are the EMP cannons. For mid-range players, that's rockets, and that's going to be stormtroopers, right? These troops have abilities, and if you watch my troops video, you'll see in detail what those abilities are. But these troops have abilities that allow them to bypass melee and hit the juicy targets, basically. And the reason those are important is because melee troops, just base hit point wise, have a lot more than your long range squishy units that are actually dealing damage. And so the reason this is important is because there are a few items that are going to slowly shift this away. So let's kind of watch a battle report, and we can talk about why the meta went this way in the first place. And then we can also enjoy a bit of a change. This is going to be a tough fight. Let's try it, though. And so I have my preset. I'm just going to send this, and it'll help me talk about what switches I'm seeing to the meta. So you can see here, we have an individual who currently is prioritizing their T11 gunners, which is a single target troop, and I mean, I'm not a big fan of single target, right? This is the same issue that snipers run into, the same issue that a lot of other things run into, where currently they are firing, right? You can see here that this particular individual has a little bit of all the troops, but the main thing that this individual had a lot of is, I assumed, T11 gunners. T9 gunners? This has got to be a different person. Hang on, let me back out and come back in. There we go. Okay, that's better. But you can see here, right, 164,000 T11 gunners. They're using, 100,000 troops worth of tanks, which is kind of what I've been doing, like the third of the fleet being the front line. The majority in your juicy targets, and he's doing a 1-1 setup, which we're going to talk about why that shouldn't be the meta right now. But you'll see for mine, I'm sending 1,000 troops of everything that isn't my main damage dealers, and then I'm doing a split damage deal situation between the T10 EMP cannons and the T11 cannons, mostly because my cannon count isn't super high, but let's talk about why you may want to do that anyways. So that's the current meta, right? I will say, as a critique for anyone, instead of putting one troop, let's put 1,000. And the reason we're doing that is the thing that countered that in the meta is this little lovely piece of lightning right here. And although it doesn't do that much, right, it activates this ability. And I mean, on my little tiny city, it's not as big of a deal, right? You're looking at, oh, hey, it's an extra 6-7% damage. But on somebody who has this properly leveled and has had a chance to level this up more than I have, you're looking at, 10% damage per troop it kills. So, when you're looking at well, it's not 10% per, so you have your base, which is really high, like 10-13%, right? And then let's say it kills, 4 troops, it gets the additive bonus down here. But I mean, I've seen it get as high as like 25-30%. And that's a lot of attack to be had for 6 seconds, because you wanted to put a single troop in there and it fed that ability. And not to mention, when you get your lightning high enough, destructive lightning, when you get this high enough, it jumps 4 times, not 3. So the jump goes up. And I don't know if it goes up higher than that. I've only seen 4. But that's my point. Putting a single troop in there is no longer viable. So if you're going to put a mixed bag of troops, put 1,000. If you've got like a really small fleet size, maybe 100. But it really, like, those individual troops just don't do anything anymore, right? And you'll even see it in this report, right? And gone. They didn't stop anything. They didn't slow anything down. They didn't take an ability that would have really done much. I mean, yes, the Titan Lightning would have done damage to those troops and, would have killed some of them, but they're not doing any good. The whole idea of the one troop slowing down the units is kind of an antiquated idea. It doesn't work past the point when people have the Titan Lightning, right? Heck, even just the destructive ray that he gets at blue tier was really starting to counter that strategy, but now it's thoroughly countered with those 2 things combined. So that's the first one, right? No more 1 units. The second thing that I've noticed comes into an item I don't have. But I keep clicking the wrong one. Where's it at? Oh, it's here? No, guide. That's right. So I normally don't look at island items and tell you, oh, hey, these are scary. But there's a couple in particular, and they're expensive to get. But if you run into somebody with these, it changes the meta greatly. The first one is your water park. Oh, no, sorry. Aquarium. Yes, there we go. Sorry, wrong water-based thing. So the aquarium gives you an extra 3% melee hit points, which is negligible. It goes up to 20%, which is not bad. It comes from the fishing event, but it's the second sentence. Melee troops will share 1.5% of the damage to other troops and Titans. So why is this important? All of the cannons, the EMP cannons, and the bypassing of the front line is going to slowly start to shift to where they're not as useful. This stacks up to 10% total. When you get this max rank, according to the event when it's going on, right? I was looking at the max stats of that. So it's 20% hit points, 10% damage share. And that 10% damage share is big because of 2 reasons. One is, obviously it's 10%. So that right there is, enough to actually make it so that your cannons and your EMP cannons are doing basically nothing. The other one is Steel Barrier, right? So while melee troops survive, damage taken by other troops and Titans is reduced by, and this gets up pretty high too. I've seen this in the 12 to 15% range. So if you're looking at 25% reduction to damage, because you're hitting, not the melee troops, your cannons and your EMP cannons are doing less and less and less as time goes on. So that ability goes off and they're really not doing much anymore. So I'm starting to see people in the highest tier of play, and this is going to start to spill over into some of the lower tiers soon. But I'm starting to see more and more people win with snipers than with EMP cannons. So we need to keep an eye out on that for the meta itself. That snipers and breaking through the front line and using things like the gunners, and bikes and stuff like that from mid-range players might start to go back into favor for the meta, because it used to be just blow through all of their troops with the highest damage per second troops there are, which really are snipers and gunners. They are the highest damage troops just per hit. And then when melee got super strong and we got Empress Escort, and we got just like everyone started to agree about melee stats, right? Like getting all that extra melee hit points and stuff like that, right? Getting all of these extra bonuses like this. When we all started to shift that way, we're really beefing up that front line, so bypassing it became important. But now Camel's starting to add in and sprinkle in items that bypass that. So that's kind of the next thing is the meta seems to be shifting more and more towards front to back team fighting, which means we need to kill the melee, then the mid range, then the long range. So front to back, and we should keep an eye on that, because if it is switching that way, then things like Katie's breakthrough and all these other abilities are going to slowly start to fall out of favor, including Maria, who just came out. The last point of this video and the final thing about meta switches comes in for two different things. It is this particular wording, but I don't want to necessarily focus on this because it's hard to get, but you may get it. The two soldier types with the most units in the mid-range and long range have a 25% chance to make the target fall into an electrocution status, additionally taking 5% electrocution, take 5% of electrocution damage every second. And then this, of course, does a bunch of other stuff. It's really cool. But the key note is the highest two units of mid and long range. So I'm not going to just give that as evidence of the two damage dealing unit types, because we're also going to talk about Katie to a degree, but she's 2 units of any type. So the thing with Katie is she's always been able to make your melee do this. So you could do like a 1/3 melee, 1/3 melee, 2/3 long range, right? And just have like tanks and cannons and you'd be fine. Or, shredders and EMP cannons, you'd be fine. Because it was 2 units. But if we start to actually think about this, right, you could go into a situation where you have less than a third, just a little bit under a third of your troops as as melee, and then 1/3 and 1/3 for your and again a little bit over, but a little bit over 1/3, a little bit over 1/3 for 2 different types of your highest damage dealing troops. So this would be like tanks and EMP cannons at a C-34, right? For what I was doing earlier. And I don't even have this ability to test, but it works really well to activate these kinds of abilities where you're getting the high damage troops getting the value of your abilities. And then Camo put out another one that works similarly, where she has a 20% chance of dealing 200% damage from middle and back row troop attack, period. This isn't one unit, this is all units in that particular row. And so again, she's going to be complementing this playstyle of adding a little bit more or different types of troop units, because the more you have, the more chances you have to proc your 20% chance. It's not 20% chance for her per combat, it's 20% chance per unit, and that does stack up very quickly. So anyone who's saying, oh hey, her breakthrough skill's not that good, you're not wrong for a single unit. The problem is when you have 3 to 4 units that could be proccing that particular ability, it actually starts to really go up. And so that gets me into the two damage dealing types. So what would a fleet look like for that? And I don't actually have the perfect fleet yet, so we're just going to fix mine up right now. So again, no more one unit. we need to make sure that we are starting to keep an eye out and possibly prioritize killing melee. And we really want 2 damage dealers for our fleets from now on. So that would look like... I'll use it at some point before the end of the day, I'm sure. That will look like a fleet where we want to do and accomplish a couple things. So first off, I'm going to go with a more balanced front line than I normally do. You can see here 75,000 is a little bit less than 1/3, and I'm doing this on purpose. Now 1/3 would be I believe, yeah, so 10,000 EMP cannons and 20,000 of our lovely Doomsday cannons. That is a good fleet setup. And then you can see we still have a little bit of room. That little bit of room goes into adding my, 1,000 troops of each. And it's worth mentioning, so obviously this is a 5-unit count, so 200 troops is 1,000 units. Right? And so we're going to add 1,000. Add 1,000. 200, because again, 5. And I don't quite have enough to get a full 1,000 out of these guys, but that's okay. I'll take 966 for the grand total. And to me, this right here is going to be your best bet, because, you're not going to have your Thor procs. You're going to have your 2 high damage dealers. So these 2 are the 2 highest unit troop counts that are, the pound for pound best units that I have available to me as a C-34. So when I unlock Katie's breakthrough skill, and whenever that is, it's going to work out well. Not to mention, it would actually function perfectly well for electrocution. It's going to function perfectly well for Maria, because Maria, again, is based on 20% chance per unit, right? So when I unlock that, it's going to be based really well for Maria as well. And all of these other troops, all of these other units, all of these other types are going to be able to coalesce into what I think the meta is switching into. So give it a test, especially if you have all of these breakthrough skills unlocked. Let me know how it works. I do have my friend and compatriot Champ, who's going to be testing a lot of this for me. He has most of these unlocked, so he's kind of my guinea pig as the higher tier of everything. He even has the aquarium, stuff like that. So you're going to start to see it on some of his reports, and I'll make sure that I can post them so everyone can see, exactly what does that look like. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. Please, again, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. That really helps the channel out. So sorry that my posting has been a little bit short. I just haven't had a lot to say about the game yet. And so we're starting to get into a place where I have ideas of what to say and what to think about. So until next time, thank you guys all for your time, and I appreciate all the attention you give this channel. It's been really wonderful. So thank you guys.